No historical personality has had more books published about him than Adolf Hitler. There are biographies about Hitler's photographer, his lawyer, chauffeur, personal physician and chief neurologist, the secretary and the diet cook. About his family from grandmother to half-nephew, even about alleged children, but none about his father. It was probably due to the lack of sources. Now the Austrian historian Roman Sandgruber has published Hitler's father. Previously, all publications on Hitler's childhood and youth were based on only 3 detailed writings with questionable truth content, Hitler's own propaganda book Mein Kampf, and 2 from the 1950s, Franz Jetzinger's account of Hitler's youth, 1956, and August Kubizek's eyewitness account of Hitler, My Childhood Friend, 1953. The bundle of 31 letters, the pages of which had long yellowed with age, had lain hidden in the attic where they were found for over a century. Only when the razor-sharp script was examined further did historians discover just who had written them, and that person, Alois, was Adolf Hitler's father. Born Alois Schicklgruber on June 7, 1837, the identity of his biological father still undisclosed, Alois eventually became a civil servant in the Austrian customs service. At around the age of 40, Alois changed his family name from Schicklgruber to Hitler, his infamous son being born some 11 years later. The contents of the rediscovered letters have allowed the renowned historian and author Roman Sandgruber to reassess the image that we have of Alois, offering the world a completely new and authentic impression of the man. In Hitler's father, Sandgruber re-examines Alois' personality and how he significantly shaped the young Adolf. The letters also shed further light onto the everyday life of the Hitler family as whole, a story which is often characterized by myths, inventions and assumptions. They have given the author the opportunity to recount the childhood and youth of the future dictator, painting a dramatic picture of the Führer growing up. These letters also help answer the question that is so often asked: how could a child from an upper Austrian province, seemingly a failure and self-taught, rise to a position of such power? Indeed, Adolf Hitler's father and the province seemingly lay heavily on him until his suicide in the Führer bunker in 1945. The author examines how the young Hitler's lonely upbringing may have affected him in the years that followed, years which shaped the history of the whole world. Hitler's father Alois was considered strict and brutal. According to Sandgruber, he was often portrayed as a bumpkin who only sat in the inn and raised bees. According to the historian, the letters open up a completely new and more accurate view of the person who undoubtedly had the greatest influence on Adolf Hitler's career. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20, 1889, Holy Saturday, in Braunau im Inn. His father Alois had started work there as a customs officer in 1871. In 1892 the family moved to Passau. Despite 21 years in Braunau, Alois Hitler never felt accepted by the bourgeois society there, according to historian Sandgruber. Alois' greatest wish was to become a farmer. He had grown up in the countryside, but without his own property. Instead, he had trained himself in modern agriculture. Given his origins as an illegitimate child from an agricultural background, Alois Hitler had made a spectacular career. Although he had only attended a one-class primary schools, he earned as much as a professor at the time, as a middle-ranked customs officer. Confusing family relationships. Alois' father is unknown. At the age of almost 40, Alois, who until then had been called Schicklgruber like his mother, registered her husband Johann Georg Hitler as his father. The spelling of his new surname changed to Hitler. After Hitler's death, Alois grew up with his brother Johann Nepomuk Hitler. His foster father Hitler was also the grandfather of his third wife, Clara Polzl, Adolf Hitler's mother. By registering her father's name, Clara had formally become Alois' grandcousin. Before the two could marry, therefore, a papal dispensation, the so-called incest dispensation, was required. The letter outlining the relationship was sent to the bishop. In his research, historian Sandgruber examined numerous details and previously circulated assumptions about Hitler's childhood and youth and made some discoveries, such as the fact that among all of Hitler's known places of residence, 2 addresses were concealed. In research, there was the assumption that the young Hitler had temporarily escaped his authoritarian father when he was transferred from Passau to Linz in 1894 and the family continued to stay in Passau. All of Hitler's flats in Upper Austria were considered known since they had been listed in 1938. Sandgruber doubts that the family lived apart for a whole year. In registration books he found 2 other Hitler addresses, in Erfurt near Linz. One of the house owners was Leopold Mosny, the richest citizen of Linz at the time. The brandy manufacturer was Jewish, the only one who was not deported from Linz for a long time because of earlier merits as a German nationalist member of parliament. He was only taken to Theresienstadt in 1942 and was dead a few days later. The address in Erfurt was not overlooked by chance in 1938, says Sandgruber. There was already a conspicuous omission that could now be cleared up. A young Adolf Hitler probably saw the first swastika in his life as a choir boy and altar boy in the monastery of Lembach. Whether he was inspired by this is disputed. Theodoric Johann Georg, 51st abbot of the monastery between 1858 and 1872, had chosen it as a speaking symbol of his coat of arms in reference to his surname Han as in Haken. The Lembach swastikas certainly do not have a German nationalist or even National Socialist background, Sandgruber writes. According to Sandgruber, many things are now much clearer what had an effect on Adolf Hitler, his father as well as the German nationalist exaggeration in Linz. The peculiar thing, in Upper Austria there were practically only German speakers before the First World War. And yet hostility against Czechs, other Slavs and so-called Gypsies played an enormous role. Very early on, around 1900, people in Upper Austria demanded that they be marked or concentrated in camps. There were also few Jews and yet this anti-Semitic thinking. Adolf Hitler always saw Linz as his favorite city, considered the time there the happiest of his life. In his last weeks, Hitler had a model of the city brought to him in the bunker of the Reich Chancellery. And until shortly before his suicide, he also carried mementos of his family with him, his father's pocket watch, his mother's letters. He remained decisively influenced by his origins until his death.